The California wildfires of 2025 were like nothing the state had ever endured. The infernos painted the skies a vivid, apocalyptic orange, casting an eerie glow over the desolate streets below. Ash fell like snow, blanketing cars, rooftops, and trees. Streets once bustling with life were silent except for the occasional crackle of embers and the distant wail of fire trucks. Entire neighborhoods lay in ruins, reduced to skeletal remains of what had been homes, schools, and businesses. The air was thick with smoke, choking the lungs of anyone who dared step outside. Barron Trump, now 19 and in his first year of college, had accompanied his family to California for a series of engagements meant to support relief efforts. While his father, Donald Trump, attended high-profile meetings and press events, Barron had been drawn to the human stories behind the headlines. The scale of the devastation shook him deeply, but it was the resilience of the people he met that left the greatest impression. The relief center in Santa Monica was a stark but necessary hub for those displaced by the fires. Inside, rows of cots stretched across a cavernous gymnasium, each one occupied by a family clutching the few belongings they had managed to save. Volunteers moved briskly, handing out meals and supplies, their faces lined with exhaustion and determination. The faint hum of murmured conversations filled the air, occasionally punctuated by the cries of children or the reassuring words of aid workers. Barron walked among the evacuees, blending into the crowd with his understated demeanor. At one cot, a young mother clutched her toddler tightly, recounting her harrowing escape to a Red Cross worker. "The flames came so fast," she whispered, her voice shaking. "One moment we were watching TV, and the next, we had minutes to grab what we could and run." Nearby, an elderly man sat hunched over, his hands trembling as he stared at a photograph of his now destroyed home. "This was supposed to be my safe haven," he said to no one in particular. "Now it's all gone." The more Barron listened, the more he realized that beneath the surface of the tragedy lay a troubling undercurrent. Some evacuees whispered among themselves, sharing stories that didn't add up. A firefighter taking a brief respite described fires igniting in patterns that defied natural explanation. "We're used to fighting chaos," he said, rubbing the soot from his face. "But this feels orchestrated." Others spoke of strange occurrences before the fires began. Unmarked trucks seen parked in rural areas, drones flying low over tree lines, and landowners pressured to sell their properties weeks before the flames erupted. "It's like they knew," one man muttered, his voice laced with suspicion. Barron's natural curiosity kicked in. He had always been detail-oriented, with a knack for seeing patterns where others saw randomness. That night, back in his hotel room, he spread a map of Los Angeles County across the desk and began marking the areas most affected by the fires. Using news reports, social media posts, and accounts he'd heard at the relief center, he plotted the ignition points one by one. The result was startling. The fires didn't spread randomly, as one might expect from wind-driven flames. Instead, they seemed to follow a deliberate trajectory, snaking through regions of high-value land and avoiding certain areas entirely. It was as if an invisible hand had guided their path. If this story has captured your curiosity, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more compelling tales that uncover hidden truths. Your support helps us bring you stories that matter. Barron leaned back in his chair, staring at the map. The pattern was too precise to ignore. His mind raced with questions. Could it be a coincidence? Or was there something more sinister at play? The evacuees' whispers of corporate involvement and deliberate arson echoed in his mind. The orange glow of the fires outside his window reflected in Barron's eyes as he resolved to dig deeper. This wasn't just a natural disaster. It felt like a puzzle. And if there was one thing Barron Trump excelled at, it was solving puzzles. Little did he know, his search for answers would lead him into a web of secrets far darker than he could have imagined. Barron Trump couldn't shake the image of the map he'd pieced together in his hotel room, with its strange patterns of destruction that defied natural explanation. The fires had taken everything from so many families: homes, livelihoods, memories. It wasn't just the scale of the devastation that weighed on him. It was the gnawing sense that something far more sinister lay beneath it. Armed with his laptop, Barron dove headfirst into the data, his tech-savvy instincts guiding him through layers of information that most people wouldn't think to explore. He started with public property records, cross-referencing them with the locations hardest hit by the fires. What he found raised more questions than answers. Several parcels of land in prime locations had been purchased just months before the fires, all by entities with vague names and obscure ownership. One company, Horizon Apex Investments, appeared repeatedly, tied to properties now reduced to ash. The transactions were odd. Land bought at above-market value, sometimes within days of each other, in areas that had been safe from previous wildfires. The patterns painted a picture not of misfortune but of meticulous planning. Driven by curiosity, Barron pushed further. He accessed open-source satellite imagery, examining snapshots from before, during, and after the fires. As he zoomed in on ignition sites, his pulse quickened. In one frame, he spotted an anomaly. A small flash, unmistakably artificial, appearing just moments before the flames erupted. It was subtle, easy to miss unless you were looking for it. But to Barron, it was confirmation that these fires weren't entirely natural. His findings emboldened him to seek out more evidence, but not everyone welcomed his questions. When he shared his observations with locals at an evacuation shelter, many were skeptical. "Son, wildfires are chaotic," one elderly man said, shaking his head. "They don't follow patterns." Another dismissed Barron's theory outright. "We've had bad luck before. This is no different." But others hinted at something darker. A volunteer firefighter, sitting with soot-streaked hands and an air of exhaustion, leaned in after overhearing Barron's questions. "You're not the only one noticing things," he muttered. "Some of the guys have seen drones near ignition sites. They're not ours, and no one knows who they belong to." Barron's search for answers became an obsession. Late nights turned into early mornings as he scoured social media for first-hand accounts and video footage. He uncovered a trove of posts from ordinary people who had filmed suspicious activity: unmarked trucks lingering in fire-prone areas, low-flying drones buzzing above treetops, and strange bursts of light just before the fires began. The deeper Barron dug, the more dangerous it felt. One morning, an anonymous email landed in his inbox. "Stop asking questions you don't want answers to." The vague threat sent a chill down his spine, but it only strengthened his resolve. As he continued his investigation, Barron stumbled upon the most damning piece of evidence yet. A video uploaded anonymously to an obscure forum showed a drone hovering near a wooded area just outside Malibu. Its underside appeared to be equipped with a small canister. Moments after the drone flew out of frame, flames erupted in the exact spot it had been hovering. Barron replayed the footage over and over, his heart pounding. "This isn't just negligence," he muttered to himself, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. "This is deliberate." He cross-referenced the video's location with the records he'd compiled. Sure enough, the area had recently been acquired by Horizon Apex Investments. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they formed was chilling. Whoever was behind this wasn't just exploiting the chaos, they were creating it. Barron knew he couldn't keep this discovery to himself. But as he prepared to take the next step, unease settled over him. The threats, the resistance, the sheer scale of what he was uncovering. It all pointed to powerful people with much to lose if the truth came out. He stared at the flickering screen of his laptop. The drone footage paused on the telltale flash that had started it all. The stakes were higher than ever, and Barron was in deeper than he'd ever anticipated. But he also knew that if he didn't act, countless others would suffer. The question wasn't whether he would press on. It was how much he was willing to risk to expose the truth. Part 3. Unmasking the Truth. Barron Trump knew he couldn't take on this battle alone. The evidence he'd gathered was damning, but it also made him a target. The veiled warnings, the suspicious black SUVs that had started lingering outside his hotel, And the sheer scale of the conspiracy confirmed one thing: the people behind these fires would stop at nothing to protect their scheme. Determined to ensure the truth would come to light, Barron reached out to someone he trusted implicitly: a seasoned investigative journalist named Linda Morales, renowned for exposing high-profile corruption cases. Their first meeting was held in the back corner of a quiet cafe in Santa Monica. As Barron laid out his findings, Linda's eyes widened with each revelation. "This is huge," she said, her voice low but urgent. "If even half of this holds up under scrutiny, it could take down some very powerful people. But Barron," she added, fixing him with a serious look, "this is dangerous. These aren't just greedy corporations. They're ruthless. Are you ready for what this could mean?" Barron's resolve didn't waver. "If I back down now, they win," he said. "This isn't just about me. It's about every family that lost their home, every firefighter risking their life, and every person who deserves to know the truth." Linda agreed to help, and together they began verifying the evidence. Using her network of contacts, she obtained additional documents: internal memos from Horizon Apex Investments, emails discussing plans to acquire distressed properties post-fire, and even blueprints for drones designed to ignite vegetation. The paper trail was damning, connecting the fires to a web of corporate greed and political complicity. But as they worked, the resistance intensified. Barron's hotel room was broken into one night, his laptop stolen, and a single note left behind: "Stop now." Linda's phone was hacked, and anonymous messages flooded her inbox warning her to drop the story. The pressure mounted, but so did their determination. Their breakthrough came when Linda's tech contacts decrypted a set of emails from Horizon Apex's CEO. The messages revealed a chilling directive: "Ensure full ignition in Zones A through C by Friday. We need the area cleared for redevelopment approval." The language left no doubt: the fires were no accident. They were orchestrated for profit, with entire communities as collateral damage. Realizing the urgency, Barron and Linda moved quickly. They compiled their findings into a comprehensive exposé, complete with drone footage, property records, and leaked communications. Barron insisted they release the story through multiple channels to ensure it couldn't be suppressed. The night before the release, Barron received another anonymous email. It contained a single line: "If this goes public, you'll regret it." He stared at the screen, the weight of his decision pressing heavily on his shoulders. But the memory of the families he'd met, the mother clutching her children, the firefighter haunted by the flames, steeled his resolve. The next morning, the exposé went live. Major news outlets picked up the story within hours. The headlines splashed across every screen: "Wildfires weaponized. Corporate greed behind California's devastation." The report named names, implicated executives, and exposed the deliberate destruction of land for financial gain. The public's reaction was immediate and explosive. Protests erupted outside Horizon Apex's headquarters, demanding justice for the victims. Federal agencies launched investigations, leading to the arrest of top executives and complicit officials. Victor Grayson, the enigmatic CEO of Horizon Apex, became the face of the scandal. His attempts to flee the country were thwarted, and he was taken into custody, facing charges of arson, fraud, and conspiracy. Barron, thrust into the national spotlight, handled the attention with grace. In a rare public statement, he said, "This was never about me. It's about holding those in power accountable and standing up for the people who couldn't fight back. The truth matters, no matter the cost." The fallout from the exposé led to sweeping reforms. Legislation was passed to regulate corporate land acquisitions in disaster-prone areas, tighten environmental protections, and bolster wildfire prevention efforts. Communities devastated by the fires began to rebuild, aided by donations and government support inspired by the story. Months later, Barron stood at a community event in Malibu, surrounded by families reclaiming their lives. As he looked out at the crowd, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here: the risk, the sleepless nights, the fear. They had all been worth it to see hope restored in the faces of those who had lost everything. Linda joined him on stage, handing him a microphone. "Barron, you didn't just expose a conspiracy. You showed us what courage looks like," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Barron addressed the crowd, his voice steady. "This isn't the end. It's the beginning. The fight for justice doesn't stop here. It's up to all of us to stay vigilant, to question what we're told, and to protect what matters. Together, we can ensure this never happens again." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing across the rebuilt landscape. For Barron, the moment wasn't about recognition. It was about the families reunited, the communities rebuilt, and the message sent to those who thought they could get away with exploiting others. Not anymore. Barron's courage reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one person's determination can spark change. His actions show that integrity, resilience, and a commitment to the truth can light the way forward, even in the darkest times. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of standing up for what's right. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Together, we can shine a light on the issues that matter most.